Today I want to talk to you about one of the most important utilities in the Shield system. It's called the DataMiner. When you're using the Shield system, one of the most important tasks you have to perform is you have to retrieve data from our NVH controller, one or more of them, or possibly from the database, or maybe what you're after is just looking at a folder full of files that have been passed to you by a colleague. In all those cases, it's a lot of data files to manage, and a tool that makes it easy to pull that data from those remote locations to your computer so that you can work on it with Shield is an important thing to make simple, easy, and intuitive. So the DataMiner resides underneath the Tools menu in Shield, and it's right here. And with the DataMiner, you'll see a display that looks a little bit like a query system and a list of whatever files it happened to find at the source destination. So this is the pull down, tells you what sources are currently configured. You have disk folders full of data files that you can point to. You have NVH controllers that you can point to pull down data or results files from them. And you can get data out of a database. And so I have one called the Shield Training Database here. And any one of these three will produce a similar display. So what we're looking at right now is what's on the demonstration NVH controller I have set up here to use for the training exercise. I can also point to a database, and the database will show a similar display, and you can see that the same set of files have migrated over to the database. Trove, our data collaboration server, has a scanner built into it. That scanner has run a route of IP addresses. It found the NVH controller, and it moved these data files over and put them into the database so they could be queried. The other place we can find data files is we can look just at a data file folder now. This is a folder that I have locally on my computer. It doesn't have the same data in it, but it shows the same type of display. You have the same columns, and you get a file name and the date and time and how big is the file. So let's go back to what's on our NVH controller. So we reach out to the training controller. It reaches out across the network, grabs a directory of files that it finds on the NVH controller and shows it to us. And then down here on the bottom we have various query selections we can use to restrict the total amount of data we're looking at. So for example, if I don't want to see some of these other things that I have in the database, I can just say, well, I want to only look at things that include a ramp up, and the list will get a little shorter. And you can sort on time from number of hours ago to number of days ago, months ago. You can sort on configuration file name, so these are all run with the ramp up configure file name. You can, if you have multiple test steps, you can pick the first, second, third, fourth, fifth step. If you have serial numbers or partial serial numbers, you can type that in here. That'll allow you to maybe just look at one at a time if you're interested, or all of them, assuming that partial mask is in place. Which one's passed, which one's failed. Of course, these all passed. And in this particular case, I've set it up to pull out the data files that are currently available. I can also look at results files. So this will tell me a similar listing, except now instead of pulling data files from the controller, I can pull results files from the controller. You can see it changes over here. It's in gray because it's not a selection at this level. It's already been decided when I defined the source. And then I might also want to change the destination, so I want that to go in my local training results folder. So before we get too much farther, let's look at the configuration settings that are available. Under the Preferences button, we can go to the general categories. We have a lot of different settings here that alter the behavior of how the DataMiner works. We can then go to our sources, and we can say, okay, we have training controller data. The IP address of that controller is 192.168.128.71, so that address is 1 PXI. And I've set it up to retrieve just data files. Give it a name and give it an alias, then that's available for selection. Here's the one that I created for an NVH controller that's just going to get the results files instead of the data files. So they both address the same IP address. Here's the database setup. These parameters define how to access the database. I have two different databases here. This is the one that actually holds the training data set. And then I can also just have folders. And a folder is easy. I just point to a folder on my computer and give it an alias, and then I can make that an easy way to source the data files in a folder. I can also define my destination folder. Now these are local folders that exist on my computer where I want the data that I'm gathering to come to. So the local training data set is going into a folder in my training data training 1 folder structure, and the local training results are going into the results structure. So that is pretty much all there is to defining the source and destination. I can just hit apply and done. And so now it's very easy for me to flip back and forth between the NVH controller and set up a mask, say, to isolate some portion of the data set based on time or configuration file or pass fail status. And then I want that data to go into my results folder, or I'm sorry, my data folder for local data. So to do that, I highlight all the ones I want and I hit start download. And now what's happening is it's looking at the NVH controller, it's telling it's got a connection. It's telling it that the NVH controller is not currently busy testing, because if it were, this FTP transfer of data files would halt until it was finished. And it tells me that there's an FTP in progress. So now I'm making a local copy of all of these data files. So now that I made a local copy, I can take a look at Shield, which is back here, and I can double click on one of these, say this ramp up 10, and I'll watch it open over here in Shield, process to completion, and produce a metric called ramp up spectrum, which is then propagated to the decision tab. And on the decision tab, I've associated ramp up spectrum, the metric, here with ramp up spectrum, the waveform here, and that means that ramp up spectrum waveform will go into the results file. Now the results file was created as soon as I opened Shield. The results file is being directed to, via the application preferences in Shield, to this training results training 1 folder, which is the same one that I had selected over here for my results files when I want to get them from the NVH controller. So I just did something a little tricky. I took a data file, I pulled it off the NVH controller, I put it onto my local drive, I then double clicked on it in DataMiner and opened it in Shield. Shield was configured to make a results file and put it in the same location that this local training results are going to go. However, that's not the only way to get a results file. These results files were created by the NVH controller when this test was run. They were then migrated into the database by Trove, and they're sitting in the database waiting for me to potentially come and get them. So my source is training controller results, my destination is local training results. I put my little mask on here so that I can isolate just the ones I want. Select the ones that haven't already been downloaded, so those are all the ones that have the blank dest column entry here. Start my download, and now I'm downloading results files. So I don't have to download the data files and then open them in Shield to produce a results file. I can simply download the results files directly, as long as they are in fact the ones that I want sitting in the database. Now that I've filled up my results file folder full of results files, let's go take a look at them. So this is a prototype tool that we're developing to view waveforms. Now I'm going to point to the folder that holds the results files we just downloaded, so that's here. And then I'm going to refresh the database, generate a new database, and it finds 11 files and say done. And then with a little bit of luck, I hit the ramp up spectrum and I can see the waveforms, or see the individual metrics that are represented in my data set. I'm going to spread the metric history selector out here. I select the one for ranges, and then I do this, and take the waveform one, and then I should be able to update and see all the waveforms on top of each other. So this allows us then to look at results files. Results files can be very complicated. They can have lots of waveforms and metrics, and of course these can be a lot longer than just 10 files. There can be thousands of them, potentially tens of thousands. And our waveform extractor is intended to build a database of results files and allow you to actually work with data sets in the thousands of results files smoothly and efficiently.